Hello, this is Billy Carson, and join us at Docufobia, the Secret Space Program. Learn more about Solar Warden, the interplanetary corporate conglomerate, Dark Fleet, the Black Ops military secret space programs, and the Global Galactic League of Nations. You don't want to miss it. Tune in now.
The experiences people are having seems to match worldwide.
The Secret Space Program is way deeper than we could ever imagine. Just how deep will the rabbit hole go?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.
I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. In conclusion, let me emphasize one point. It is not a pleasure for any President of the United States, as I'm sure it was not a pleasure for my predecessor, to come before the Congress and ask for new appropriations which place burdens on our people. I came to this conclusion with some reluctance.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of it?
And leading the world to space helped America achieve new heights of prosperity here on Earth, while demonstrating the power of a free and open society to harness the ingenuity of its people. And on a personal note, I have been part of that generation so inspired by the space program. 1961 was the year of my birth, the year that Kennedy made his announcement. And one of my earliest memories is sitting on my grandfather's shoulders, waving a flag as astronauts arrived in Hawaii. For me, the space program has always captured an essential part of what it means to be an American. Reaching for new heights, stretching beyond what previously did not seem possible. And so as president, I believe that space exploration is not a luxury, it's not an afterthought in America's quest for a brighter future. It is an essential part of that quest. So today I'd like to talk about the next chapter in this story. Now, the challenges facing our space program are different, and our imperatives for this program are different, than in decades past. We're no longer racing against an adversary. We're no longer competing to achieve a singular goal like reaching the moon. In fact, what was once a global competition has long since become a global collaboration.
When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. So important. Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the 6th branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. You know what this is? Space. So what does this say? Space. A lot of room out there, right? Infinity and beyond is infinity. It could be infinity. We really don't know, but it could be. There's got to be something, but it could be infinity, right? Okay. All right.
you know, I don't know how long it's been, but I know that the Germans were the first ones during World War II, and actually a little prior, the years prior to World War II, that discovered anti-grav technology, at least the ability to get through the solar system quickly. Not so much intergalactic flight like they have now, but they did, and what they found when they went into space was many different civilizations that live in our solar system.
Well, based on my research and a lot of the research that I've done, obviously with the show Deep Space on Gaia, which is very, very popular right now, because we've done a lot of hardcore, in-depth research to get vetted information from good sources like William WhiteCrow here. He's a fantastic source. And what we found was that there seems to be that sport model craft, or actually was the Hannibal crafts that we kind of researched that were able to leave this planet as early as the 1940s. I mean, into the 1960s, they were really high tech. But the Hannibal 3, according to the work that I've done so far, seems to be the one that most likely was able to hold a crew of about 250, fly over 7,000 times the speed of sound, and could leave from here and go to Mars and back. So yeah, it's absolutely, definitely true.
I just read before we went on here that it could travel from 6 to 8 weeks on one journey. Before
absolutely, 6
I don't
to 8
know.
weeks with fuel. What they had is a rotator ring. They actually use some type of a mercury vortex engine, but they injected some type of a serum into the mercury. So into the liquid metal that was rotating at about 50,000 RPMs, they would pressurize it to about 250 pressures, and then when you electrify, you get anti-gravity properties. But they injected some secret serum into it that gave it the extra lift. But there was also some thrusting capability that it needed to maneuver, and that's why after so many weeks, you would have to come back and refuel.
Does it sound familiar to you?
That's it. He just described exactly, because when another individual asked me about the transportation, the ability to get down to the surface and back up and everything, and I said it's a dual fuel. You have your anti-gravity, but when you get down to the surface and everything, and you have to have this thrusting capability in space and everything. It's really very important. When you're close to a planetary surface, it's a lot easier because you do have gravitational field, you have atmospheres, no matter what they may be made of, something that you can work with, and very, very true, That's how come when I heard that he was going to be on, I was kind of inspired, really, because we had somebody that knew the technology.
That actually our solar system, the back of the moon and the moon itself, as well as inside the Earth, is very populated with other species of intelligent life. And they made treaties with some and settled out there. And after World War II, they lost the land, the world, the public face of the war they had lost, but factions of the German military group, or the German government, had moved to Antarctica and to the moon and to other places, bodies in the solar system, and settled and created a breakaway civilization, which is a civilization that operates independently of the rest of us here on the Earth. I guess shortly thereafter, I don't have all the numbers, but shortly thereafter, the United States and Russia got scientists that led them on a trail and created years later, a decade or two later, created their own secret space programs and went into space and made separate treaties with other extraterrestrials and with the Germans themselves. So they're pretty fragmented. It was my experience when I was traded from one compartment to another, that they kind of have a rivalry with each other, but they work together. They share resources, all of those colonies, and they've broken into individual colonies that are incorporated, that run as corporations under an umbrella corporation, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, the ICC. So what you've got is the Lunar Colony, a Mars Colony Corporation. I ended up at the Ceres Colony Corporation, and on and on and on. Each body in the solar system where they've settled, it becomes its own corporation.
I am a SecretSpace Program asset that was in the interplanetary corporate conglomerate on the Mars basis. I did a 60 and back, which was a quantum leap time traveling program associated with the SecretSpace Program, the ICC factions that were on Mars. So basically it was time traveling 60 years. I am 33, but biologically I am in what would be like 60s. So that is basically the component of my SecretSpace Program aspects, and I've had also been abducted by various ETs, particularly the reptilians from the age of 2 to 10. So I've had experience dealing with many different extraterrestrial species as an ET contactee, as an ET abductee, and as an SSP asset as well. While I was in the SecretSpace Program, I worked with various different ETs and interacted with them. I did language translation, I did communications work. I also worked on the cybernetics labs that are attached to the Mars bases. So what I saw was human components being augmented and spliced with cybernetics together to create a cyborg being, to basically create a new being, a new life form. And those cyborgs were sold or given away as scouts or soldiers to various other ET races to trade for medication, various trade routes, you know, planets and stuff where you could trade things. So that's very important to the interplanetary corporate conglomerate because they exchange technology and medications with other ET species. They're all about technology and advancement. So that's what the interplanetary corporate conglomerate does on Mars. They do all kinds of genetic experiments, etc., technology, and they work with other Earth-based corporations because they have associations with Earth-based corporations as well. So it's all combined in a disciplinary way in how they work out in space and what their dealings is with Earth corporations that they're attached to. So it's a very intricate process of how that happens, and I got to see all of that stuff with doing communications, with doing the cybernetic stuff, I had Neuralink implants, so I understood various ET languages. I got to visit various different planets, particularly Mars, and also the ICC Mars space station platforms that they have. They have 4 of those stationed around Mars, and they're usually cloaked. So I got to see that and serve as an asset, and mainly on the Mars bases, 11 of them. So that is my introduction, my history of the SSP and the ET stuff.
And that's how they run everything, and it's a totalitarian, militarily governed settlements is what are going on right now in the solar system. They use the Earth. The banking system and everything has been under control. They use the Earth for resources. And there are other ETs that come here and use the Earth for genetic experiments, and they use it for just bulk resources. You'd be surprised. I mean, I ended up working, so I was taken in 81 and 82 in that period. And a lot of people don't know what a 20 and back service is. And this is another thing, and this is the hardest thing for people. When I tell people that don't know anything about it, this is the hardest thing for them to get their heads around, is the alien abduction phenomenon is many different things. Many people get abducted for different things. But the MyLab ones and a lot of these, the technology involved is the ability to take somebody and then use them for services of 20 years. Some people have the genetics to go 20 years and then come back and then do another 20 years. But then come right back to the time that they left. Now, when you can travel interstellar space, you can travel time as well. So what they are able to do is take somebody, and there are a few different theories as to how they accomplish it, but they can take somebody and then make them work for them or serve a 20-year service, 20 years in the space colonies. Then through different methods, either with a cloning technology or with a age regression technology, which there is literature on the internet. There is information to dig this up, but with age regression technology, age the person back to how they found them.
Yeah, in 2006, I formed a partnership with somebody that I met at a festival, and we started dating each other. While I was living in Washington, D.C., he would go to secret meetings and come and visit me. And he started to tell me about what these meetings were all about. And it had to do with going to Mars in 2012, and that was the target date. And we were going to go in something called ARCS, A-R-C, and it was for my protection and whoever else was going to go, you know, to basically the whole idea of protecting the human genome in the event that there might be a catastrophe at some point. So, you know, it seemed like a well-intentioned agenda, like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, but I still really don't want to go because I have a strong mission here on Earth. But as I started to really listen in and follow the emails and started to investigate the names of the people that he was working with, it became very clear to me that this agenda had been infiltrated and that it was more about New World Order and using weather modification and dark technologies to create sort of a apocalyptic scenario. So it seemed like, wait a second, if we're going to go off planet, what would be the reason and what would be behind that reason? So I started to just really investigate the people, the names, the group that he was involved in, and the different types of technologies, the different ET government treaties, the origins of any kind of agenda to go to Mars, and I just really did my research. And this was before I was aware of a lot of other whistleblowers or people that had been connected with it, but what I came to understand was he was in a My Lab sort of scenario. He had been dealing with abductions and artificial telepathy, sort of leading him to participate in this agenda. So there was a lot of people that, you know, were well-intentioned, that were supporting this idea. He was a good person, you know, he was supporting this whole plan, but he was massively being mind controlled because he had a handler and he would get instructions over the phone and he would disappear for days and not remember anything.
This advanced base, or space station, will be headquarters for the final ascent to the moon. Our space satellite will have the shape of a wheel, measuring 200 feet across. Its outside rim will contain living and working quarters for a crew of 50 men. Just below the radio and radar antenna is the atomic reactor. Its heat will be used to drive a turbo generator, which supplies the station with electricity. Access to the station will be through an airlock in the hub. The three large spokes are elevator shafts, and the small pipes are used as condensers for the turbo generator and the air conditioning plant. The entire wheel will slowly rotate at 3 revolutions per minute. The resulting centrifugal force will produce an artificial gravity for the men in the rim. Notice that the floors are placed so that the men stand with their heads toward the hub. The wheel is divided into 9 sections. The first section is headquarters and communications. The next section will be for Earth weather observation and prediction. Military reconnaissance experts, aided by powerful optical and radar telescopes, will observe every point on the globe as the space station makes its complete trip around the Earth every 2 hours. Next is the emergency hospital section. And then the astronomy division, where men will keep an eye on the rocket ship as it makes its trip around the moon. The rest of the space station will house calculating machines, maintenance facilities, air conditioning equipment, living quarters, and even a botanical and zoological laboratory. This entire space station will have to be prefabricated and tested on the ground.